All right. Yeah, how's it going out there?
Yeah, howdy, all you little cowpokes. This is Graham,
And this is Ashkahn.
and today's question. She's got a little echo going on. Is loans versus investment? That's it. That's the entirety of the question that we got.
Okay.
So, yeah, we could talk about that.
Yeah.
There is a difference. They mean two fundamentally different things, but both are ways to raise money for your business.
And I guess versus self-financing.
Yeah, we can improve on this question.
Yeah.
Let's throw some more in here.
Well, I mean, like that one's pretty quick. Like if you have self-financing, usually that's what you're doing. There's not a lot of people who have enough money themselves and still decide not to use it and instead go to get a loan or get investment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's this idea, like maybe you'd have to empty your entire savings or bank account in order to do it, and then you'll see people be like, well, no, I'll keep some in there and only spend a portion of it. Also, there's very few situations where you're going to get by without any personal investment. Like very often that's what you start with is some nest egg of money, however much it is. And what you're trying to do is snowball that up to having full financing for your float center. That's probably like the number one path that people are taking.
Yeah, no matter where you're getting money from, which direction you're going, you're always going to be expected to be putting some down yourself.
Yeah, and it makes sense too. Like people want you to have skin in the game. And the amount of money that you're going to need in order to do that will, of course, change depending on what you're trying to do and how you're trying to raise money. But fundamentally, if you're a business owner with this expensive idea like a float tank center and you have absolutely none of your own money to contribute, like that's going to be a much harder path than if you're able to put in a decent chunk of change and again, kind of have some of your own skin in the game.
So, okay, let's talk about loans versus investing, as this question wants us to.
Yeah, so loans are things where you're getting money and you're expected to pay it back with interest over a set amount of time.
Yeah. An investment is something where you're getting money and you're not expected to pay it back. Instead, the investor is hoping to make money in some other way. So either by getting to sell their portion of ownership later on down the line, or by getting dividends based off like the profits or revenue of your company.
Yeah, and most often, a lot of investors want at least a way to be able to cash out and claim their value of the kind of full value of the business, not just dividends. Like it's very rare that you'll find an investor who is totally happy for the lifetime of the company, only collecting dividends and never intends to kind of be able to unload the rest of their investment in the business itself.
Yeah, and loans seem to be a slightly more common path for people in the float world than investment, and that's just because very, very typical investment is kind of its own beast, right? Like investors, when you hear about like venture capital or like normal big investment sort of stuff, there's a round of investors, they're hoping to sell to the next round of investors, they're hoping to sell to the next round of investors. There's kind of like an expected amount of growth in your business that investors are looking for. A huge amount of growth.
Yeah.
10, 100 times bigger than what you started as. And so when you're taking on investment, they have their eyes towards you're going to be opening dozens of float centers, or you're going to be franchising, or, they're going to want to see, typically, this is just real conventional investors. They're going to want to see some sort of like much more serious growth model than I'm opening a float center, and maybe I might open a second one if things go well, like 5 years from now.
Yeah, and it's a good time too to mention there are totally different kinds of investors and different things that those investors are looking for. Like the biggest distinction is between those kind of venture capitalists and more friends and family is what they call like very small rounds, who will still be your investors, but often have much different requirements than people who do this professionally and are in the kind of big money game of serious venture capitalism investments.
So yeah, that's the nice thing about investors. Or investors are just people, and they can decide whatever they want to do with their investment. So often when we hear of people like getting actual investment to open a float center, it's with it's they know someone, friend of a friend, and they're really interested in the project. I don't hear of
Or
float
their
centers.
their parents are their investors,
yeah,
right?
whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't.
Or the guy who lives next door, for example,
Yeah, talk to your neighbors. So yeah, I don't really hear float centers going to like giant VC firms and like pulling on a Series A round of investment. Like that's just kind of a different class of.
You pretty much have to like plan on franchising,
Right.
And have some serious things built into your business from the beginning that will really gear it up towards franchise development in order to like eventually even hit that size of growth where you'd be attractive to more serious investors.
Yeah.
The sharks.
So, there's one perspective of comparing loans against investment where you're just looking at the finances. Loans, obviously, you have an amount of interest that you're going to have to pay back over time. And that interest can be significant, compound interest over time. And investment, you're giving up a portion of your company. And there's scenarios where financially you could come out ahead in either way.
And it's I guess another important thing just right there to totally interrupt you is that the giving up a portion of your company is not just a financial decision,
right?
Whereas the loan largely is along with the loan comes no amount of control or governance that is required of the person who's doing the lending, whereas an investor often that share is coming along with serious voting power and the ability to influence the directions your company is going. And I guess just keep in mind that percentage comes with other impacts. It becomes a lot more like a marriage at that point rather than a loan, which is what, more like a pimp or something like that, and less like a marriage?
That was exactly what I was building up to. So I don't. that was the point I was trying to get at there. So yeah, that's basically it. Like the finances can go either way depending on the outcome of your business, but the kind of effect of having an investor versus having a loan on your decisions is definitely one that you should also consider. It shouldn't just be like a numbers game that you're crunching.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess also worth noting that on the loan side, you can also have private lenders. Like you don't need to be going through a big bank. You can also get loans from friends and family or loans from other people that you know. So there's kind of this whole range of private loans, big institutional loans, more private friends and family financing for the investment side, big serious investors. So there's a range on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, and a lot of times when people are getting loans in the float world, they're getting SBA-backed loans. And we have another podcast episode where we kind of explain what those are and what goes into them. So definitely listen to that one if you're kind of interested in, I think, like the most commonly walked path of people bringing on money.
Yeah, it goes much deeper down that rabbit hole for sure. And what else is a difference here? I mean, you can do both too, and often for larger companies, there is some mix of both debt and investment that they take on because there's different amounts of risk associated with each one. So you can have a small amount of personal capital and use that to get even like a small private loan and use that to go and get some more friends and family on as investors and then use that to go get a bank loan. And a combination of all of these is likewise totally possible. And in fact, it's pretty rare that someone has only one or even only two sources of raising money for their business. Very often it'll involve a combination of personal round or personal money, friends and family round, and getting on some kind of bank loan or a larger chunk of money coming in through that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can check out stats on this too. The 2017 industry report is the most common, but you can see throughout time for the last 4 or 5 years where people have been raising their money. And you can also see the percentage of people who have raised money from bank loans just kind of go steadily up through that time. So it does seem like people are both opening bigger, more serious centers and like they're successfully finding funding from them, specifically from big lending institutions, which speaks well to just the awareness of floating and people treating it more seriously and seeing it as a legitimate business over the past like half a decade. Yeah,
and there's people out there with investors, and that's where they got their financing. So even from whatever kind of route that you're picturing, there are like people who have successfully done it and made it work in that direction.
And there's like 2% that funded their center through credit card debt, which I'm just like, oh, golly, this sounds really dangerous. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully that kind of overview is helpful if you're just kind of not really too familiar with that world or even what to be paying attention to. Yeah, did you have any other kind of high level generalities you wanted to?
There's regulations and rules and stuff about all this stuff. Lending, investments, who you can invest from, how much money you can take from how many people. Like so just keep a small eye out for that. If you have some sort of crazy ideas, you might want to like run them by someone to make sure that they're legal.
If you're actually trying to scrawl out your contract on like a McDonald's bag or something like that, and get a quick signature, it's probably not. There's probably more to it than that.
Yeah, but in general, it's nice to know that you're not crazy for thinking that you can raise money outside of yourself for opening a float center.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, if you have any other 3-word questions that you want to send our way, you want to head over to floatanksolutions.com/podcast. And we will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.